Right now I'm going to give you an overview of the build of the Nautilus in about 11 minutes. So it's all going to be captured here. Here's some lovely shots I made of the boat using my tug, the camera based on the tug, and it looks quite realistic, doesn't it? I'm absolutely thrilled with that. And you can see here the checker marks on the sail and the way it looks weathered. That is exactly how it looks in real life. I just think it's stunning. So I'm pretty happy with how this boat has come up overall. You can see it's got a fantastic turn of power and speed, and it looks pretty majestic. In fact, most of the components that I started out with to build this boat I kept because the balance was about right. It's two 555 motors, direct drive, and you get a very realistic outcome to how the boat works. Now this is some pictures taken from the tugboat camera, or tug cam. Unfortunately for my movies, this is ruined by an enormous duck in the background. But you can see the boat is sliding under the water extraordinarily nicely, and it's a very, very nice performer. One thing that's nice about a submarine is when you can get it to operate like this, and it's very predictable and safe, as much as a submarine ever can be. So there we go, surfacing, using the surfacing routine, and away we go. Yes, it looks good, and so now we're going to begin the building process. You can see here the sail and how the sail looks in real life. You can see it here with the markings. Sits a bit higher in the water than my boat, but never mind. I'm happy with how the Nautilus is looking. So we begin the whole thing by roughing out the hull and then describing how I think it's all going to go together. I've got an idea of what it's going to look like. I've got an idea. I want that kind of finish. And so we do a fair bit of work at the beginning of this series of videos, looking at how I think it's going to work, and then reflections on how it actually did work and what the differences were. What you can see here is my just building this thing from a plan, creating it step by step, and in each of the movies the detail of these components is very carefully outlined. There's 42 movies in all, and right at the beginning, while I'm building the hull, I'm also building the propellers. I'm building the end caps and the tubes. Very happy with that. Give you really good instruction on how to build end caps, because I think I've nailed it now. A double O-ring piston for extra safety, and that works absolute treat. I built the piston, and you can see the motor on there isn't particularly big, and what I ended up doing was purchasing another one which is considerably more powerful. This is the subtech valve, and I've got a fair bit of material on the subtech valve. This is a slightly bigger version, and it works obviously really well. This is the homemade impeller, the homemade impeller pump, and now I'm starting to think about how to actually construct the power drive system, putting the propellers in place and the motors in place, and how to construct the seals and the direct drive. This was quite an interesting process, and the end was really good. It's worked out really well, and honestly the boat, as you can see, runs an absolute treat. Then started building the stern hydroplane system to get all of that working nicely. I've got a really good system for making these scratch built, and the same for the sail. Built this out of balsa to start with, and then used aluminium flashing to actually construct the outer layer. Now it comes the top combing, and I left this till last for a reason which I won't go into now, but that's worked out quite well. Then we had to build the bow hydroplanes, because I needed to get all of that in place before I could work out where all of the cylinders were going to go on inside, and spent a fair bit of time thinking about how to construct this rather difficult engineering problem where the planes are at about 140 degrees when fully extended. But it worked out really well, and I take you through all of that process painstakingly, and then we got the Arduino out to begin to work out how to make the planes work. Wrote up the code. This is the finished contraption that sits inside the hull in the bow. Very pleased with how all of that came out in the end, but it was quite a bit of work to get there. And what you can see here are the planes opening, and you can see the computer under and a bit of the code, but it's a dream. It really works extremely nicely. And once I'd done that, I had to fit that code into the bigger block of code that runs the entire submarine, and got that running on the bench, as you can see right here, including the pressure gauge in the little bottle, and you can see the old bottle of wine that I've used to test it with. Then had to think about where everything was going to go and where the wires were going to go out and in and how that was going to work. Build the control room, as I call it, where all of the electronics go, and then get it all working on the bench, all of the components actually humming and running, and then start to think about soldering it all up into the boat and getting it so that it will work actually in the boat. So this is the first time I've actually had the components running in the boat, and now I've put it together. That's pretty majestic looking. All goes in, and then of course you have to pressure test every component, and I found problems with each one. But once you've got them fixed, this was the big moment when I put the boat in the water and it sank stern first. Bow was positive, but that was it. So after a lot of playing, I got it to look like this, which took about 10 to 12 shots to get it to actually, adjustments to get it to work properly. But at this point it's working nicely, and then in its raw form I took it down to give it its very first run on the water, and it was delightfully successful. You have to do this before you do any finishing, because the finishing process is going to be too fine and too delicate for you to start doing these big adjustments. So this was the very interesting process of putting those nice checker marks on the sail. I made the deck out of strips of plastic that I cut just from a sheet, and then sprayed it all with etch, and you can see now the sail looking a bit strange, but now I'm also going to do the sides of the hull also with the same methodology, and the result, I have to say, was pretty stunning. This is just putting some ballasting strips on the side of the ballast tank. It's a bit overdone. These are the transfers that I used to put the signs on the sides of the hull and the various components, and here it is looking almost finished, but it just needed a coat of flat varnish to finish the job off, and the result, as you can see, is pretty nice. In actual fact, it cruises slowly, very majestically and very nicely, and the bow hydroplanes are a stunning component of how this boat works. You can see I've got them turning here, and I'm just getting the boat down in the water so that I can begin its first run. And it's a little bit light. It's not going any deeper than that, but by a bit of forward motion down on the hydroplanes, I was able to pull it down to a nice depth, click the snapshot on the transmitter, and then turn it on about now to automatic control, and it holds its depth beautifully. So it's a very nice boat to run. I've got it now running in toward me. I've clicked dive routine, and the piston and the trim tanks are working, and right now the main ballast has come on. It's very quick. It takes 10 seconds to fill the tank once it starts, and it runs along on the surface very nicely with all the tanks full. You just have to pull the hydroplane down very slightly, turn it on to auto, and you're right. Now I've just caught it after surfacing. You can see the checker marks on the sail. They look fantastic. That is actually a very nice shot of the boat. She's leaving us now, and as she goes, the hydroplanes are tucking up because I'm going to do a power run. Up they go. It's a really stunning looking boat, this. So what I do when I do a power run is I pull the hydroplanes up, just the stern hydroplane, just to give it that nice bow up angle, and then apply some power. And before long, this is it's running almost overpowered. It's quite powerful, as you can see, but the water is it's just got the most beautiful bow wave. And that is exactly, actually, what the boat looks like in real life. I think you'll have to agree with that. So here I am bringing it in just for its final run into the shore before I pull it out. And I'm really pleased with this boat. I think it's just turned out magnificently.